A shared but divided place.
How we have handled the issues of identity in the last 25 years and even before hasn't worked.
I think there's been a failure in our politics, and that is why language legislation was required.
Often a flashpoint about power and belonging.
Unionist minority rights in Belfast City Council are being steamrollered.
It's not about imposing one or the other people, it is about saying there is additionality.
Tonight we look at the challenges facing the new language commissioners and ask if it can ever be a unifying force.
Okay, Gia Diva heard you? Eindag mai tá sé deas sibh a goilinish, so a nocht tá muid gul a gork Cursey na Hampshire. Cursey na Hampshire, in other words, the weather. So the word in Irish for weather is Hampshire, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about.
Dr. Ian Malcolm has worked in the Irish language sector for more than 2 decades. From a Protestant unionist background, he's taught the language to students across Northern Ireland and around the world. He believes Irish belongs to everyone, regardless of religion or background. There's absolutely no doubt it has been politicised in Northern Ireland, and it has polarised society, it's divided people. How does that make you feel from being a person who is enmeshed in both cultures?
It makes me feel very, very sad that something I love so much should be a bone of contention between the two communities in Northern Ireland. I think though things are beginning to change.
Irish and Ulster Scots are both protected under law, promoted as part of Northern Ireland's shared cultural heritage. The new Decade New Approach Agreement of January 2020 paved the way for the creation of the Office of Identity and Cultural Expression. In November last year, it was announced that 2 commissioners were appointed, one for the Irish language and one for the Ulster Scots Ulster British tradition, as well as the Commissioner for Identity and Cultural Expression. It's been a long path, but what do the appointments mean? So Paul, it's all very new. We're in this meeting room, but you don't even have signs up yet for this new role. Tell us a bit about what you're planning to do.
So the main aim of my role is to establish best practice standards for our public authorities to use. The aim of the Act being overall to provide recognition, official recognition for the status of the Irish language through development of these standards, so that the Irish language, its use rather, is enhanced and protected throughout the public authorities here. So that's the main thrust of the role. So it's more of an oversight role rather than development.
The way I would describe the creation of these 3 new institutions is a recognition that how we have handled the issues of identity in the last 25 years and even before hasn't worked. And we are a new attempt to try and improve that situation, to make the conversation better and to achieve better.
And is it achievable?
It's perfectly achievable, yes.
The commissioners have 5 years to fulfil their remit of promoting cultural pluralism, social cohesion and reconciliation. So how difficult is it to promote a respect for diversity when opinions are so entrenched in both communities here?
And I think the challenge is that when we only speak of both communities, we undermine what is actually happening here, which is incredibly positive in terms of how we are growing as a place. We have a very mixed demographic now. We have a growing mixed and multicultural and intercultural set of ways of being in this world. And that's, again, proving a challenge. But with that brings all sorts of opportunities, and that also enables us to think how we become better neighbours to each other.
The Irish language has seen renewed visibility in recent years on street signs, in education and through new policy.
Gaelic le Fegal in St Monagar, Hart Aaron Cahir Hain. This is a historic moment for Belfast City Council to agree one of the most progressive Irish language policies that we've seen on this island.
In October of last year, Belfast City Council approved an Irish language policy, setting out how it plans to promote and use the language across council services. For supporters, this is long overdue recognition. For others, there's a feeling that minority rights are being disregarded.
We see this as triumphalism, as territory marking, some things that ironically unionism has been accused of in the past, but it's a weaponisation of a culture that should unite us, that's being used to divide us.
But there are not going to be Irish language street signs on the Shankill.
No, but there will be Irish language street signs in the Shankill Leisure Centre, in the Shankill Waste Management Centre, on the uniforms that workers from Belfast, from the Shankill Road who work for the council wear, will be an Irish language street signage, and the vehicles that are driving up and down the Shankill belonging to the council will be in the Irish language.
Well, the reality is it is part of life in Belfast, and there is very little escaping from that. But I think it is important to say that it's not about imposing one or the other people. It is about saying there is additionality and there's a recognition for minority language communities within the city.
There are Irish language policies in other councils in Northern Ireland, but not all. However, in Belfast, the conflict over language has spilled from the council chamber into the courtroom. Proceedings were issued after councillors approved the draft Irish language policy in October last year. Amid unionist objections, what's known as a call-in mechanism was triggered to scrutinise the legitimacy of that decision. Pending the outcome of that process, the draft Irish language policy currently remains on hold. And it's not the only court battle ongoing over language. A row over signage at Grand Central Station is also subject to legal proceedings, with Stormont ministers embroiled in the row. So when it comes to minority languages, who speaks what? The 2021 census found that 12% of the people here have some ability with the Irish language. That's an increase on the 2011 census. Now, the most recent census also found that 4% of people who live here say they could read, write, speak and understand the Irish language. The same census also revealed a significant increase in Ulster Scots speakers, with more than 10% saying they had some ability. That's up from 8% in the 2011 census. Now that's more than a third of an increase, and it's the largest growth in any language group, and some 21,000 people say they could read, write, speak and understand Ulster Scots.
We have, of course, Shankill. Now, this side of the river is all in the parish of Shankill. So the whole parish of Belfast on the west bank of the Lagan, which is the County Antrim side, is strictly speaking the parish of Shankill. And Shankill means old church.
Professor Micheál O'Munion is a Queen's University linguistics expert.
In the 19th century, Belfast would have been a city in which certainly Irish was spoken, more standard English was spoken, and Scots was spoken. So in that sense, it was a multilingual city.
Was it a polarised city with the languages then?
Well, that became more complicated with the passage of time, not at the outset, not at all. I mean, it was a Presbyterian city at the start of the 19th century, but it was also a city which was very proud of its Irish cultural background and heritage. And indeed, the Irish language revival started in Belfast, not in Dublin, and it started among the Presbyterian community of Belfast.
He's witnessed a growing interest in the Irish language here. We're seeing a revival now, obviously, and it's a subject that you're teaching. Are you seeing greater numbers wanting to know more about the language?
Absolutely, we are. We certainly have seen a spike in our first year this year. So yes, there's much more enthusiasm. It's not always about third level. It's quite often about people, who have left formal education behind them and in later life wish to discover the language. Indeed, ironically, some of the controversy around Irish language legislation inspired many people to take an interest in the language in the course of the last 5 or 6 years. People who would be older, as they say, and who just wonder what's all the fuss about.
A major 10-year survey to be published later this year by Forrest Nagilliga claims significantly improved attitudes to the Irish language from both communities. But when one language gains ground, there's often a perception that the other has lost. It's rarely a neutral issue, with arguments over perceived cultural dominance.
There's a conversation going on at the moment with Belfast City Council
the Ulster Scots Agency is part of the conversation around developing an Ulster Scots policy for the city. So that conversation's going on. Obviously, this is a challenging space. It's very clear that it's a challenging space. There are aspects of the policy that's been introduced so far that people in the city, there's plenty of evidence that people in the city have difficulty with it.
What would you say to people who, again, feel like their rights aren't being taken into consideration?
I would say, look to Wales. People who speak Welsh are no less British because they speak Welsh. Look to Scotland. People who speak Scots Gaelic, which is essentially the same language as the Irish language, are no less Protestant or Unionist or Loyalist or British because they speak Gaelic. And by the same token, why should anybody be less Protestant or Unionist or Loyalist or British because they would use the Irish language here?
Concerns over representation continue on the very streets where we live. Okay, do you think the 15% policy needs changing?
I would accept in the past that the 2/3 was probably too much. I think we've now got the reverse, that we now have something that's too low.
A celebration of Robbie Burns, the highlight of the Ulster Scots calendar and celebrated in communities across Northern Ireland.
His knife, see rustic labour decked, and cut ye up where any slicked. Gushing your groaning entrails bricked like ony ditch. And then, oh, what a glorious sect, warm, reeking, rich.
This North Belfast gathering is a snapshot of pride in the culture, but outside, Ulster Scots is playing catch-up in terms of visibility. Belfast City Council's dual language street sign policy has been in place since July 2022. It means signs can have dual language if requested by a resident or a councillor and supported by 15% of residents in a survey. Previously, it needed support of 2/3 of residents. Belfast City Council say applications for dual language street signs are processed in the order they're received and as quickly as current resources permit, in accordance with the current policy, and that processing is not dependent on the language requested. 562 applications have been processed since the policy began, resulting in 278 approved streets, all with Irish as the second language on the sign. The council has also completed a project to erect 764 dual language street signs in Irish in 301 streets in the Geltocht quarter of the city. At an average price of £130 per sign, the cost of this project alone is almost £100,000.
This is one of 3 Ulster Scots street signs in the Belfast City Council area, all erected under a previous policy. Now, under the new 2022 policy, there have been no Ulster Scots street signs processed to date. Now, Belfast City Council say applications were limited for Ulster Scots street signs in the first year of that policy. Just 12 were received out of a total of 850. The rest were in the Irish language.
At the moment, there are 338 pending Ulster Scots street sign applications and 1,124 pending Irish language signs. There have also been applications submitted for signage in Chinese, Mandarin, Hebrew, Greek, German and Japanese.
There are serious grounds for reflection on the policy that Belfast has adopted as regards street naming policy. That's what I personally believe. I'll be perfectly honest that if a situation arose where there was a proposal for an Ulster Scots street sign and 16% said they wanted it and the remainder said they didn't, I wouldn't be comfortable with a street sign going up in that situation, personally. And I don't think it would be necessarily healthy for Ulster Scots in that situation. Now, in every other street where it's a majority saying, yes, we want it, then I'm perfectly comfortable with that. But I do have a concern about that, because you start opening the issues of that it's seen as an imposition. You are opening the issues of that can be presented as an attempt at assimilation.
Okay, do you think the 15% policy needs changing?
I would accept in the past that the 2/3 was probably too much. I think we've now got the reverse, that we now have something that's too low.
It comes down to balance, with minority language rights here enshrined in law.
We don't want to shove the Irish language down anybody's throat, but there's a quid pro quo here, and I accept that. You know, the people I've engaged with in the PEL don't want to shove their culture down anybody's throat either. So I think we need to respect it, and that's part of the journey we need to go on, where our minority languages are seen as something that is completely neutral. But then in doing that, we need to show a modicum of respect for all of our cultural backgrounds here.
But in some areas, the street sign policy has underlying division, like here in the heart of East Belfast.
Good evening and welcome to UTV Live. Damage to a bilingual street sign in East Belfast last night has been condemned. The sign in Shandon Park was cut with an angle grinder and the Irish language was removed. Police are treating the damage as hate motivated.
The 15% mechanism that Belfast City Council would implement is not fair. All it takes is for 15% of a street to say that they want Irish language signage. It's introduced, there's division in the area, there's costs associated with that, and it's not fair and it's divisive.
Whilst I didn't vote for the sign, it's not my party's policy to have the sign here. I'm happy to see it here, and I'll wholeheartedly condemn any vandalism that happens. It was a democratic decision at the end of the day, and I think people need to realise that the sign isn't a threat to them. It's a sign of what their neighbours are embracing.
Away from the friction of politics, love for language flourishes.
This living tongue was one I once misplaced. Moving out into the world, I withdrew from it, laid it by. Now I am ready to taste these words again.
Anne McMaster is an Ulster Scots poet and writer.
This newly remembered voice, my coming home. I'm really just embedded in the middle of what's happening with Ulster Scots, and that allows me to maintain contact with everything that's happening on the island, to look at all the languages that feed into that. We're not exclusive, and it's lovely to have those conversations. I've had quite a number of chances to go and talk to various groups and organisations over the last year. And the conversations we're having is how someone will come in with a really good knowledge of working Irish, of working Ulster Scots, and we begin to look at the commonalities. This is the slow and steady linkage that's happening. And the word osmosis is one that I absolutely love. It's where one language percolates into, feeds from, draws from, and benefits from the other. And I'm happy to work forwards with that.
Where language may divide, music often unites. Andy McGregor plays and teaches bagpipes. Today he's playing Scottish small pipes alongside fellow musicians Cian McGrory and Donal O'Connor, who's director of Belfast Tradfest.
Well, I suppose since 2016 Tradfest has operated on a level where we've brought people together through traditional music and tried to break down any perceived notion of music belonging to one side or another.
We never did think that we were doing anything that people might say, oh, that belongs to you or that belongs to me.
As part of Tradfest, we've incorporated the Highland pipes, the snare drum, the small pipes as part of our summer school of traditional music. And of course, this year with Fleadh Cheoil na hÉireann coming to Belfast, which is the biggest celebration of traditional music in the world, it encompasses Highland pipe competitions as well, pipe band competitions. So there's great crossover, and we're at the confluence, I suppose, of where Irish traditions meet Scottish traditions. And with that comes a very particular flavour and sound.
The new commissioners are just months into their 5-year roles. Time is ticking, but hopes are high.
I've begun a programme of engaging with all of our communities, and that has included representatives of some bands, organisations, and that's going to continue. And it works both ways. I want them to understand that there's no threat within the Irish language as an Indigenous minority language of the UK. just as Scots Gaelic is in Scotland and Welsh is in Wales. There's no threat to their British identity.
There is a legal duty for the government to produce an Ulster Scots strategy for culture, heritage and language. And basically we need to make sure that happens and it delivers as meaningfully across a whole series of areas. And then we have the broader issue and challenge around how Britishness is treated in Northern Ireland. And it's a thing of, part of this is also how you react. And it's basically put the energy into building. Take the energy and put it into something positive and you will find yourself in a much better place in 5 years' time.
Can you see a day, hopefully within your remit, that we don't have the divisions that we do now? And is that something that you think is a realistic goal?
I absolutely think it's a realistic goal to aspire within the next 5 years, which is the tenure that I have. The Ulster Scots Commissioner and the Irish Language Commissioner and I are already out and about working together and informing each other about what we feel would be helpful to each other, together and separately. And that's, I think, a positive way forward.
We always did sit round tables and bars and just play the music. It was tunes from different parts of the country, but they're all jigs and they're all reels.